Hey guys, let's answer question number 1 here. The data below shows 14 sixth graders' heights in inches and their current percent in science class. Plot the data on the graph. So we're trying to see if there's going to be a relationship between the student's height and then their science grade. Real quick, I want to point out that this little mark on the graph just means that we skipped some numbers. See how we went from 0 and then we started at 48. So anytime you see that little symbol on the graph, it just means some numbers were skipped. So we jumped from 0 to 48 because we didn't need all those really small heights, right? So let's plot the data here. So the first student has a height of 58 and they have a 60% in science class. So 58 on the X and 60 on the Y. The second student has a height of 54 and their science grade is 45. So 54 on the X, 45 on the Y. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and graph all 14 of these dots. Remember, they don't need to be perfect. We just want to get them real close. So the height is the third student's height is 60 and a science grade of 90. So 60 on the X, 90 on the Y. So you can see how I'm always starting on the X first and then I'm going up to the Y. So the next one's 66, 40. 66 on the X, 40 on the Y. 64, 80, 64 on the X, 80 on the Y. 48, 95, 48, 95. 48, 55, 48, 55. 68, 80. 60, 50. 54, 85. 52, 70. 59, 75. 67, 90. And 51, 85. All right, let's answer the questions. Are there any outliers? Well, an outlier would mean that it's, one of the dots is much different than the rest of the dots. I would say, these almost all look like the data is really spread out, right? So I don't see any kind of pattern. So are there any outliers? I would say no on this. I'd say all the data is spread out, right? Is the association linear? If I draw a straight line on this graph, most of the dots are not going to be right. But like if I drew a line kind of going down or a line going up, the dots are not necessarily, I don't see a pattern, right? I don't think I can draw any kind of straight line on this graph because the data is so spread out. So I would say no. Again, the data is really spread out, right? What kind of association do you see? I don't see one, right? And it makes sense because I don't think a student's height affects their grade in science class. One does not affect the other. So when we get two things that you can, if we would have thought about this from the beginning, we would have kind of thought that a student's height is not really ever going to affect their grade. Doesn't matter if you're short or tall, you can still do well in science or do poorly. So it's all about, how hard you work. So I hope that helps. Thanks.